Welcome back to the Growth Over Goals podcast. I'm your host, Jordan Montgomery, and today I'm with a dear friend. I've always said it's more fun and more meaningful when you get to interview friends. We're fortunate that we get to know most of our guests, but this guest I've gotten to know in a unique way. Shout out Mark Funk of Waterloo, Iowa, who brought us together a few years back. And from the moment I met Doug Schwab, I thought this guy is a really unique leader. Now, he's accomplished a lot in life. He's had a unique path. We're going to talk about his path first. We'll talk about what makes him a unique leader second. But for those of you that don't know, Doug Schwab is a former Olympian. He was recently named National Coach of the Year in college wrestling. He leads one of the most elite college wrestling programs across the entire country at University of Northern Iowa. His two sons are two of the top wrestlers in the country at the high school level. They were both state champions in the state of Iowa. And again, if you're not familiar, Iowa is one of the top states when it comes to wrestling talent. It'd be hard to say there's an athlete, a coach that we know, certainly not in our ecosystem, that's had more success and had a bigger year than Doug Schwab. Doug and Allison live in Cedar Falls, Iowa. They love the state of Iowa. Doug himself was one of the greatest college wrestlers to ever come through this state. But what makes him a great leader is his humility. I'm going to tell just a quick Doug Schwab story as we dive into the conversation here. Met Doug, we're at University of Northern Iowa. I'm getting ready to speak to his wrestling team. And I said, Doug, you're top 5 nationally. You get all these really elite wrestlers to come to Cedar Falls, Iowa. And you don't have the nicest facilities. You don't have, all the money in the world, right? I mean, this is a small town. And I said, it doesn't make any sense that you get the kind of wrestlers that you get and you turn out national champions and conference champions every year. I mean, you're just winning like crazy. It just doesn't make any sense. And Doug Schwab says, well, it makes sense to me. And it's one of my favorite Doug Schwab stories. I think it embodies his humility, embodies his spirit. Keep things simple. He knows who he is, person of faith, loves his family. Welcome to the show, Doug Schwab. Thanks for being here.
Oh man, I appreciate it. That's that intro couldn't have made me any more uncomfortable, though. I'll tell you that. But no, I appreciate your encouragement, and it's been great when you've been able to come up and talk with our team, and then we just have continued to message back and forth, and then our relationship is built, and I appreciate anytime that we get to talk or meet with one another. So I'm grateful for the opportunity to be on the show.
Well, love having you, man. Love learning from you and all the small moments that we've got to share together. And I think you're one of the great leaders in our state, certainly in the sport, but also just in life. I mean, I love getting to be around you, and I love getting to talk to the wrestlers that you've led. People have been through that program, the Garrett Funks and the Parker Keckeisens. And I thought it would only be fitting to reach out to one of your wrestlers. And I said, hey, Parker, national champion. You don't know Parker Keckeisen. What makes Doug Schwab special? And so I'm going to share this as we lean into conversation today. And then we're going to get to talk all about life and leadership. Here's what Parker said about Coach Schwab, and this is going to make Doug feel highly uncomfortable, which is precisely why we're doing it. If I had one word to describe Doug Schwab, it would be leader. He's a man that I'd want to go to war with, a man that I'd want in my foxhole. We all know wrestling is not the most fun sport, but when it's not fun, he's riding in the trenches with us. He's a man that I admire and strive to be like one day. He is strong because he can talk about his weakness, about the mental part of life and also the physical. He's not afraid to tell us about his therapy sessions, what goes into them. And he's got such a toughness and embodies what it means to be a Panther. He's selfless, coachable, and one gritty SOB. There's no transactional encounters to Doug Schwab, only transformational. Doug Schwab is the man. Doug, talk to us about what your relationship with the wrestlers has meant to you over the years.
So I'm going to talk about Parker for a second, because, you get as much from your athletes as, they get from you. I think that hopefully those guys understand that, a guy like him, man, he's taught me so much. I mean, I watched him this year. He loses in the national finals, and I saw how he handled that. I saw, him be up the stands and the biggest smile on his face for one of his teammates. I remember how when I lost my senior year, how I handled it, and it was not like that. So you start to understand that you can actually surrender the outcome. That's something that's actually possible because I actually watched him be able to do that. And his faith is strong. I've got to see him grow as a person, which is such an incredible thing as a coach. And really that's what I want. And why I coach is to get them to really learn how to trust themselves, as a person, because wrestling's going to stop at some point, for all these guys. For Parker, maybe not. He'll be part of wrestling probably the rest of his life. But the coaching part for me is building a relationship, getting them to trust themselves and believe in themselves, buying into something much bigger than themselves. And then, the foundational things that we talked about, being coachable, which I think you have to be able to take direction. You have to be able to, if you want to learn and grow, that's how you learn and grow. You got to be, to me, selfless, because you want to leave things in a better place than you found them. And again, wrestling is a very selfish sport, as far as, you want to take as much as you can for your opponent, but I want to be able to give back as much as I can to my team and the people that are around me. Gritty and sticking to your long-term visions and goals. Yeah, I mean, those are the things that, I try to relay and talk with our team. And then more than anything, hopefully I live and I model, because I think they're only going to follow you so far. Like I said, if words and actions don't align, they're not going to follow you for very long. Like if I'm asking, he's talking about a foxhole, like he's not getting that foxhole with me if he does not trust and believe in me. And again, I think trust and belief is earned. It's not something that's just given. And I continue hopefully to show up for people. And again, I try to be who I am. And and I'm hopefully getting more and more comfortable in who I am and what I believe in, and sharing that with them. But more than anything, I try to show it through my actions. And they're just like, well, okay, coach lives like this. Maybe they ask a few more questions about it, but hopefully they never have to question as far as how I feel about them. And my care and love for them is very clear.
Well, clearly you're getting guys to buy in. I think it's one thing to develop talent. It's another thing to attract it and develop it. So you're attracting top talent. You're developing top talent. I share that story about, it makes sense to me. In fact, I introduced you one time that way before, and you said, well, actually, it's kind of mildly offended when you said that. That didn't make sense. But talk to us about it. And again, just for context, if you're not from Iowa, or maybe you don't follow wrestling, I mean, Cedar Falls, Iowa is not the biggest town, and it is uncommon for a school your size. I mean, you've made this program a nationally recognized program with top talent every single year. And so somebody from the outside that's not there every day would say, I don't get it. It doesn't make sense. They don't necessarily have all the money, or the best facilities, or all the biggest crowds, but yet you guys are winning like crazy. Why did you say it makes sense to me?
Because I don't think any of that stuff in the end really matters. And what I mean by that is, like, you can have all the money in the bank in the world. You can have the nicest facility. It's not going to get you through a tough time. It's not going to get you to really trust and believe in yourself. Like it's window dressing. It looks great on the outside, and then you really have to dig into things. And I think that's the same thing with credentials. You see all these things and about me, things that I've accomplished, but if they don't really know that I really care about them, they can't look in my eyes and be like, man, coach, I know you have my best interests in mind. And when we both feel that back and forth, I don't think you can get the most out of, your athletes. So, I don't know, I've been around the world and I've seen what people have won with, and they can win with a whole lot less of, the shiny and the new and the bells and the whistles. What they win with is, we all have that same time. So, I mean, I say they won't get a more investment anywhere else. And they certainly won't get more belief in put into them than they were anywhere else. And I think that shows in one, I think what we're getting out of our athletes, but also that, for the most part, no one's leaving. I mean, especially in the climate of NIL and the world that we're in right now, kids are just not all kids, because that's a whole nother subject. But, I think they're kind of trying to look for something. They're looking for the payday, or they're looking for the magic bullet type deal, which there isn't one. And that's what I talk with kids when I sit in their home. And that's what I'll say to them when they're 10 years out, because that's what I've lived. And that's what I try to really get them to understand. I try to relay that to them. And then they have choices to make if they're going to actually live that and try to implement that in their lives or not.
Well, it is interesting to think about, today's climate with NIL and the transfer portal. And, we're seeing kids jump from place to place, regardless of sport, for the next best thing or a new situation that feels better or pays better. We have a lot of folks who are in a situation that maybe isn't ideal. We have some leaders listening who think, well, I don't have the best circumstances. I wish my situation was different. Wish my leader would look at me, differently. You've got guys to buy in to the way you do things. Talking to Mark Funk the other day, who's a parent of one of your wrestlers, Garrett Funk. And, Garrett's battled injuries. And I said, Garrett ever think about just hanging it up because he hasn't been able to really get healthy. And he said, Garrett told me he'd never give it up, never hang it up because of his love for Coach Schwab. What would you say to leaders who want to build that type of culture? We're able to attract people for the right reasons and then keep people for the right reasons. What does a leader need to do or need to think about to build the type of culture that you've built at Northern Iowa?
Show up first and foremost. And I think from the first conversation, to the last, things don't change, and that doesn't mean maybe I don't upgrade certain skills, or maybe, especially wrestling skills and technique. Like if I'm not trying to upgrade and grow and learn new things, then something's wrong. But I think who I am and what I believe and what I stand for doesn't change a whole lot. And my belief in them doesn't change. That's what I tell. I mean, I sit in kids' homes and I'm like, I make a conscious decision to believe in you. And that's not gonna blow with the wind. Right. I mean, and I try to make that a special thing. Like if I'm going to recruit you, I'm going to offer you, I'm going to bring you part of this team, you're going to feel that. And hopefully they feel that obviously way beyond the 5 years that they're here, 10 years that they're here. And I think that's the first thing. And then you got to model it. Like, again, I don't think there's a whole lot that I ask these guys to do that I don't do myself. And if I don't do it or I don't follow through on it, I'm willing to be like, you know what, guys, I didn't get that done today. Or, you know what, I feel like I messed this up. Or, hey, you know what, everyone was tired this meet. That's on me. We overtrained. I have no problem being able to do that and say that, because I think, then for them, then they'll be a lot more free and vulnerable to be able to open up when maybe they feel like they make a mistake. Because again, I'm not going to burn them at the stake for those things. We're trying to all learn. We got 18 to 22-year-old that we're managing and dealing. They're trying to figure things out in their life too. So, and that doesn't mean that there's not a standard there, because we have to have a standard. But I don't know. I just think you have to model and you have to continue to show up. And then, you can't think that if, 1 week and 1 month and 1 year, like it's going to be years, and you have to continue to, hit the rock, so to speak, till that thing cracks open. And if you're willing to do that, then a lot of good things will happen. If you're not, then you're probably going to be disappointed. I guess I would just tell them to continue to not point the finger somewhere else. That, oh, we don't have this, we don't have this resource, we don't have this. And then it's like, to me, then you're giving away any of your power. And I try to get our guys to never do that. I try to get them to do this always, because I don't want to give away my power, because again, like, it's always in response, right? I mean, stoicism, and you start getting into some of those things and reading, response is key. And that's how I try to live. I can't always control the circumstances, even within a match, right? I mean, a referee blows a call. Okay. And I guess I'm not always a great model in the corner.
Yeah.
But trying to get them to do that. But I think as a leader, like, you have to know if you're going to use an excuse and that's going to be the problem, then your guys are probably going to go to that route too. And then you're in some trouble.
Well, I remember talking to you at the end of last season, and, you wrap up a grueling season, and we had an event in Iowa with some leaders, literally, I think the day after season wrapped up. And so I'm checking in with you, say, hey, Doug, still planning on coming. No worries if you can't make it. I know you just had a crazy year, and you especially had a crazy year, just all the success and big year for you and your family and you and I. And one of the things you said back to me is you said, yeah, I'm going to be there, but I need to go home and hug my girls first and spend time with my family.
Yeah.
And I think part of what's worked for you is you've led it home first. And I think especially when you're leading young people, young men who desire to be husbands and fathers, they might not talk about this a lot or tell you, but I know they're looking at the relationship you have with Allison and the relationship that you have with your kids, and they're saying, man, I want that someday. And I love the axiom of, I want to be respected most by people who know me the best. And I think the children that you lead, and I know Allison is your biggest fan. You guys have such a special relationship. Talk to us about what you've learned just about leading in the home over the years.
Well, that comes from my parents too. I mean, there's a lot of things that I take from both of my parents. My dad and mom both. I don't ever remember them being critical of our wrestling. They were just always showed up and were incredibly supportive. I mean, they were always there. Never critical. They wanted the best that was for us, and that's the one thing that has always kind of stuck with me. I was trying to remember, I've tried to done that with my boys, the things within their control. This is what I'm going to grade you on. I'm not going to grade you on the wins and losses. I'm going to grade you on your preparation and how you treat your teammates and, how coachable you are and those type of things. I think they're within their control. But that comes, so much that comes from my parents and, especially my mom. So I don't know. When you lose people in your life, you think you try to, hopefully they're looking down, they're like, man, I'm really proud. I'm really proud.
Yeah.
And I try to think about those things consistently and how I'm living, that she feels good inside about that. So, I don't know. I think, man, I'm responsible for my family, right? That's number one. The guys on the team, I love them. And I'll tell you a little story about when I first got the job, and now, that's 15 years ago now. One of my sons was in a stroller, and my other boy, they're 16 months apart, was walking in, and I said, we're part of the family now. This is the family. And I know that word gets thrown around a whole lot, right? Especially within college athletics, it's a family. I think a family's a feel. Family's when you come in and a family, they share everything too. They share the good and the bad, and I think my wife and I try to be very open and honest with, that we do have struggles. Things aren't always sunshine and rainbows, so to speak. We work through things and we're willing to show them that. And I think that's why guys appreciate it, and that they understand those things and they see them, and we invite them in our home and they're comfortable in our homes. They're comfortable around our kids. And I think it's also important that my kids see that I'm going to pour into other people, and I'm going to do a job. I'm going to do it well, and I try to do it as well as I can, and not again, because they're, like I said, how long are my kids going to follow me too? If I'm going to say one thing at home and I don't know. I'm still trying to figure it out, Jordan. I do not have it figured out. I'm trying to navigate as, my sons are, junior and sophomore, and they're getting recruited, and they're going to at some point here leave the house. And I'm taking that with, I'm sitting in homes with parents too. And I'm like, hey, I'm going through this with myself. So I just think I'm hopefully relatable in a lot of ways, because I've kind of seen it from every angle, and I don't know. I mean, I'm getting away from the parenting part, but it's my biggest responsibility. And Allison and I try to be very intentional on some of the things that we do as far as raising our kids and leaving them very well prepared for when, they are not under our roof anymore.
Well, I think one of the things that works well for you, both in the home and in your program, is you lead with humility. I think you value people who are grounded. You want people to be grounded. I think you're grounded. I think you and Allison fight hard for that, because I think pride is alive and well in all of us. If you're not intentional about being around people who keep you grounded, I think you could end up in a unique place in life, especially when the world's telling you that you're great and you're winning awards and producing national champions. I'm going to pull back the curtain, Doug, and share with our audience a conversation you and I had yesterday via text. I get a text from you yesterday morning. You said, let me know if you want to connect more for the podcast. I send you a text back. Hey, we're good. I just want it to be a natural, organic conversation. Here's what I loved. You said, awesome. I'm good with things just flowing. It's much better that way. Just wanted to make sure you still wanted me on. You've been having some bigger hitters on lately. I just kind of chuckle at that. I'm thinking, first off, this is, we schedule these conversations way in advance. We do all kinds of research, come prepared. This is a big part of what we do is produce the podcast. So, the fact that you were checking in and then the fact that you had mentioned, hey, you've had some bigger hitters. I respond, I said, well, I've never interviewed an Olympian who also won National Coach of the Year. I know you don't care about that stuff, which is exactly why I want to have you on the show. How do you and Allison fight for humility and work to stay grounded in a world that wants to tell you that you're great as a coach, as a leader, your boys are great. Gosh, you wrestled in the Olympics at the highest level. I mean, how do you maintain the fight for humility and battle against pride?
Oh man. Right. I mean, I guess, that's a battle, honestly, for all of us. Right. I mean, cause, I think, faith is important to me. How I live I don't know. I just don't think you've ever arrived. I think it's something that you're still trying to work and learn and grow. And I guess I try to stay grounded in the fact that, there's perspective, in life. There's so many things that, I guess I'm trying to be just incredibly grateful for having my health. I'm trying to have examples in front of me and people that are in front of me, but also trying to seek out things, and be around people that keep you very, grounded. They have people around you. And so my wife is, she has no problem. Like, hey, you say you're trying to live like this, you're trying to do these things. What kind of example are you trying to be? So, you need to have that. It's at points you're kind of like, come on, man, just relax, get off me a little bit. But, in the end, you're very thankful for it because she's holding you to that standard that you asked for. I think it's how I was raised. And, kind of going back to my mom and again, I'm very proud of some of those things that I've done and accomplished. I obviously haven't done it alone. There's always so many people that are part of that. And I try to make sure that people understand that and I recognize them. But I've always said that if my accomplishments are what is going to precede me and not how I treated you and not how I leave you feeling, then I don't think I've done, I guess then I haven't, to me, lived the way I wanted to live. Does that make sense? Yeah,
sure does. Yeah. Well said.
So, yeah.
I just love that it makes you so uncomfortable to answer a question about humility. That's a humble response to a question about humility. I want to go back to the first time we met. A few years back, I'm speaking to your team. Of course, I'd followed your career, knew you from afar, but hadn't met you at that point. And again, Mark Funk connects us, a mutual friend of both of ours. His son Garrett's on the team. And, we talked a little bit before I spoke to the team, then I spoke to the team, and then something happened that was really unique. We're leaving and, especially in the world of sports, you just don't see this very often. Every one of your wrestlers stopped to pick up the room. Like there were like scraps of food on the floor. I think we were eating Subway sandwiches or Jimmy John's or something like that. And they all had, they made sure their space was cleaned. They're picking up scraps off the floor. And then they left the room. They all shook my hand, thanked me, looked me in the eye, addressed me by name, and they all left. I go, wow, that's really unique and interesting. I mean, you just don't see that with college athletes very often, that kind of humility and willingness to do those small things well. And then I looked over and you were taking out the trash. And I'm like, what kind of a room am I in, man? This is not your normal, Division I sports program. And you're cleaning up the room, taking out the trash. And then we posted something later that day that kind of went viral on social media, that if you're too big to do the small things, you'll always be too little to do the big things. And I know that's been sort of a hallmark of your career. Talk to us about how you get kids that age to buy into doing the little things well.
Well, Jordan, I'm smart enough to know that it's how they've been raised. I mean, I'm trying to certainly find kids that have had some of that instilled in them, right? I mean, that's their parents, it resonates with them. You sit and talk in their home and you talk about the things that I was talking about before. They're shaking their head. They're like, yes, that is what I want for my kid. That's how I've tried to raise them. So, I'm finding a lot of those kids, and you get a little bit in the world right now, the kids are different and that and stuff. And I don't necessarily think that they're different. I think maybe some of how they're raised, and some of the expectations, some of, what the parents, trying to make a better life for their kids. And a lot of times are, that making it easier doesn't always make it better. I think you have to understand that because they have more doesn't make it better for them.
Wow.
And I'm trying to find, obviously wrestling, I think, exposes a lot of that, because, you're out there by yourself and you can't get rescued for anything. But I'm trying to find kids that have been raised like that as much as anything. So home visits are really important. I get to see how they interact with their parents and they talk with them. I get to see certain things, and there's so many incredible kids out there that have been raised well, and we have a lot of those. And then, I think when you get into an environment where that's the expectation, that's the standard, if you're off track, it's like, oh, either I get on track with this or,
yeah,
you know what, I'm the outlier, not part of it, so I just think that's a part of it. And I try to relay to them too, like, okay, when you came into the program and you came on a visit, what stuck out to you? Well, guys came up to me and they said hello and it was inviting. I'm like, okay, so if that made a difference for you, it'll make a difference for them. That's what we passed on. And so trying to get them to understand those things and really get out of themselves, right? Because, everyone's so worried about themselves and winning. And I'm trying to get them to more, hey, my teammate, what can I do for them? How can I leave them in a better place? Not just leave myself in a better place, but leave them in a better place. So I think those are relayed from the first conversation I have, though, with these kids when I sit in a home visit, and then I try to look for those things. And I don't know, it's worked out pretty well. I think that's probably one of my most important jobs is who you recruit, who you offer, who you bring part of your team, because they're going to make up your culture.
I think so much of building a great organization is identifying the best fit, the right fit, and being able to evaluate talent and character. And I think that's one of the things you've done really, really well. We have a lot of people listening who are in that same fight, right? Maybe you're not recruiting wrestlers, but you're recruiting salespeople, or you're recruiting, engineers or architects or whatever line of work you're in. I mean, you're looking for people who fit your culture, and you're paying attention not just to talent, but to character. I'm going to put you on the spot and ask you a question, because I want people who are in the business of talent attraction, and maybe you're a young leader listening, go, man, I'm not hiring people, I'm not attracting talent. But I'd say, hey, you're always attracting opportunity, right? So, if you're in the people business, if you care about people, if you value relationships, we're always, attracting opportunity. So if a parent asks you, and I know it doesn't always happen this way, but I'm putting you on the spot for effect.
Yep.
Hey, why should my son come wrestle at UNI? Why should my son join your program? What do you tell him?
Yeah. I mean, well, they're going to leave in a better place, and it's going to be so much on them and the work they're going to do, but they're going to have someone that believes in them and believes in them as a person. I mean, wrestling's brought us together, but we're going to find a lot more common threads than that, So the things that I ask them to do, I'm going to do a lot right along with them. They're not going to be by themselves a whole lot, as far as looking over their shoulder when they struggle. In the good and the bad, they're going to have someone that has their back, and they're going to know that. And I just think having someone that believes in you, and sometimes it only takes one, right? One drop starts to overflow. I always say that, and one person can make all the difference. And, for them, I'm like, I plan on being that one person, there's going to be other ones around, but they'll at least have one. And, and they have great support around us too, and they're going to grow as people and they're going to grow as wrestlers. And I feel, I feel incredibly confident and trust myself and my staff and the people that they're around that's going to happen. Like I can't guarantee them any wins. I can't guarantee them any national titles that's so much depending on them, in the work that we're both willing to do. But I just make sure that they know that they will not be there alone. And, then we kind of go from there. And either they believe it or they don't. I like I said, my answers don't change. They'll ask me again. Uh, and they'll ask me 5 years from now. Like I said, I want to be able to leave 5 years from now and be like, you know what? I helped this guy leave in a better place, and he believed in himself more, and he's more prepared for the world that's going to be around him. So,
I know that's from the heart, and I knew whatever you were about to share would be profoundly simple. But what I heard you say was, we build people first and professionals second, or wrestlers second, right? And so I think the world needs that message, and we all need somebody to believe in us. I mean, you look back at your journey and you go, man, this person believed in me. This person believed in me. Most people need somebody to believe in them before they believe in themselves. And, you're walking with these young student athletes through some really tough times where belief is essential. I know we're winding down our time together. I'm going to take a hard right turn because this is one of my favorite photos I've ever come across on social media, and I can't let the podcast end without asking you this question. And this is part of your journey, Doug. You've been around some incredible leaders. I mean, your life is it's allowed you to have some amazing coaches, amazing leaders. You've been around some just incredible talent. And I think it's part of the reason you've become a great leader. You've been exposed to other great leaders. There's a picture from the Olympics. What year was it, Doug? I should know that.
2008.
2008. Yeah. That's what I thought. Mm-hmm. The 2008 Olympics, and it's you and LeBron James. It's just one of the best. Yeah. It's one of the best pictures. Two worlds colliding, a wrestler and a basketball player. What was that? Yeah. What was the Olympic experience like? And then more specifically, what was it like to be around, some of the, elite athletes like a LeBron?
Yeah. I mean, I actually got asked this, I was at a home visit this week, and like, hey, kind of tell me about the experience. And then, I think I've probably so much has been why I didn't medal, you're so much on the performance and not always the other things that you were able to do. It's like, man, you were in the opening ceremony. I mean, so the opening ceremonies was an incredible thing. I think even just the lead up to the Olympics and how much it resonates with the country, every single person that you're like, man, I mean, everyone was behind you. It wasn't like there's a few people, like your whole state, your whole country, everyone. So to see that kind of unity was pretty incredible, again, so I kind of go back, and I think too much I dwell on what I didn't get, and then I got to slap myself and be like, there's 400 people that went from the United States, and you're part of those, and you're focused on what you didn't get, and instead of using it as a lesson and try to grow from it. And I got to take my own advice, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
But yeah. I'm getting off track. But I mean, that's the first thing that comes to my head. Well, I didn't, you kind of want to brush past it because you didn't medal, you didn't do those things, and you're almost embarrassed about it instead of the immense amount of you look back at an immense amount of pride you should have on it. So I'm still trying to work on that, even though it's, heck, we're 16 years later, which is ridiculous. If you think about it, like, come on, dude. But I probably should think about it a little bit more, just in not pride, but like, okay, you got to a place that a lot of people want to get to, and you should be proud of that. And a lot of people are proud of that. So go to LeBron James, but I mean, the opening ceremonies, all that, the whole team was there, and, everyone's kind of mingling around, and, people started getting pictures with guys. We had a guy that was on the team, Daniel Cormier was on the team, and he was in the 2004 team. And, some of the other NBA stars weren't quite as inviting in 2004 as they were in 2008. So he was a little bit like, I don't know if I want to he wanted to get a picture with Kobe. And he's like, what if he, what if he kind of just crushes my world because I think so highly of him. But anyway, we went and got a picture with LeBron, and we're like, hey man, just go see him. Go and those guys were all inviting. They were, I mean, heck, LeBron acted like he knew me. It's like you don't know who I am, but I appreciate that. I appreciate that. That that you see that. But the way I looked at it is, every one of whoever it was in that room is one of the top in their craft.
Mm.
Just they happen that they make a much bigger salary and they have a few more endorsements. But if it was a skeet shooter who I sat next to, or it was the gymnast who you had lunch next to, or the swimmer, like they were all the top in at that time they were in the best in the world at whatever they were doing, which
Mm-hmm.
that's a pretty cool thing to be part of that and be around that group. But I probably should open my eyes a little bit more and probably should rethink about it instead of going to the competition, because there's so many other things that happen with it that I can take with me and more than anything try to use to help the athletes in front of me be able to understand some of that stuff. So I probably need to do a better job, but
Well, I think here's what's cool though is I think you have an ability to recognize that and say, hey, that's really cool to be around people who are some of the best in the world at what they do. At the same time, I think you're a leader who values people far more based on who they are and their character than their talent. I think that's been a hallmark of your leadership for sure over the years. I want you to have the final word, Doug, and I know you're preparing for another great season. You got an incredible team, unbelievable culture. It still doesn't make sense to me, but it makes sense to you. What are you most excited about? And is there any message you want to leave our leaders with today before we sign off?
Oh man, I'm excited to watch these guys kind of step up a little bit, because we had a really great senior class. We had some incredible leaders, especially with Parker and Happel and Lance and Budo, and I mean we had a great senior class. But again, time keeps moving no matter what. So do you move with it? Do you grow with it? Do you learn from it? I put a big giant chip on my shoulder, because I don't think a lot of people think, one, they don't think that we can win here because they look at the size, because they look at the resources. But ultimately, the ultimate resource, I think, is within you, right? I think you have to remember that, and I think that's what I'm trying to get each guy to not get caught up in the BS of what you don't have, but what you do have, because then time passes you by, and you're so focused on that again, the things you control, you let out of your control, and there's no growth there, and then there's pointing fingers. So I guess I'm excited because I've watched these guys really start to understand themselves a little bit, and I saw them get better at their craft, because I'm watching guys. We had a little bit of break, and I'm seeing guys come back in. I'm like, oh, he really worked on this. The things that we talked about, so they're really taking to heart those things, and then they're really trying to be great at their craft, and they're trying to help their teammates grow and get better. And when you have a young class in, you kind of like, hey, are these older guys going to take them under their wing? Or are they going to start to bring them along? And they're already doing it. It's starting to be where a lot of the problems and issues, they don't even get to me. They're already squashed, or they're taken care of because our guys take care of them. And I think that's probably the best place to be as a program, right? The stuff doesn't even get to me. It doesn't need to, because
Wow.
these guys know. They know who's towing the line. They know who's not. They know, and they'll put it in place already. They'll put it in line already. And that's where we're getting to. Guys have to be okay, a little bit more comfortable, and not, I want to say not being liked, but like, hey, sometimes being a leader, like you have to tell some people some things that maybe they don't want to hear. There's a way that you can do it that I think can be much more approachable, and they'll listen. And so I
Mm-hmm.
got some leaders on the team right now that are trying to learn how to lead, and I'm trying to give them advice and understanding and get them, like, because if we won't listen to the message. If they won't listen to the message, they turn it off and they get defensive instantly, then they're never going to hear the message, right?
Mm.
So trying to get them to understand that. And obviously when you build relationships, I feel like hopefully I have and they have with each other, guys are welcome it in, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I guess trying to get those things to happen. But I don't know, I guess for me, I know a lot of people don't think our team's going to be very dang good this year.
Hmm.
Like, oh, you lost all these guys. And I'm just like, yeah, well, we have all these guys right behind them that are really step up. And that's probably what I'm looking for the most because, we had some incredible crowds. We got a lot of people excited about UNI wrestling. And we got a lot more people that came. So I don't know. I'm probably looking forward to getting back in competition, but more than anything, I'm probably looking forward to just next week we get school started back up and get back in
Yeah.
routine and just get back to work and covering ground. So I don't know. I get all over the place. I'm a little bit scatterbrained of kind of you kind of veer off. But you can say, hey, you kind of talking to me about some of the other leaders out there, maybe some people that are listening. I think don't get so caught up in your circumstance, right? Don't get so
Yeah.
caught up on what you don't have. Continue to focus on what you do have, and if you have endless energy, I mean, and you have a belief and a trust, like you can build something. And
Mm.
one drop, one belief. And if I don't believe, man, how can anyone else? So I mean, that's why again, that's a choice I try to make every day when I step
Mm.
in the room. And heck, man, there's some days where it's a struggle, and I know we all have those things, right? But
Yep.
when there's a bigger cause and a bigger purpose, which I feel like I definitely have a bigger cause and bigger purpose, and I'm trying to show and I'm trying to lead with my faith, right? Because
Mm.
it's hard sometimes because coach, how do you say this? How do you say, well, one, I believe in you guys, but I also believe in something bigger, and I
Hmm.
believe that whatever we go through, any trials or tribulations or anything that happened, like on the other side of it, it's going to make us stronger and it's going to make us
Amen.
better. And when you really trust, so everyone's like, I trust. I'm like, well, how much do you really trust? How much do you really trust? I want my faith to be incredibly clear and like my hand to be steady, no matter what. They're like,
Hmm.
they can look at me and be like, you know what, coach still trusts and believes in it. And even though, like you said, it doesn't make sense to me, but it makes sense to him. So you know what, I'll follow. And
Come on.
that's how, I guess that's, again, I don't think I've changed a whole lot. I mean, I'm trying to adjust and grow as a coach, which every year, but I don't know. I hate to say that I want to prove a lot of people wrong.
Yeah.
That's always a little piece of
Yeah.
me. I'm trying not to make it the whole piece. Proving ourselves right is much more important, but there's a little bit of that right now that's really kind of gnawing at me a little bit that, oh,
Mm.
these guys, they're not even talking about us. They don't even think we're going to be any good. Well, they lost this guy and that guy. And it just, so I kind of want our team to be like, you know what? We're not going to listen to that noise. We know what we have and we believe in what we have, and we're just going to keep going back to work. So,
Well, I'm going to vote for team motto next year. Maybe some branded UNI wrestling T-shirts with a team motto that says it makes sense to us.
I like
And
that.
I think about your leadership, Doug. Man, what you've accomplished, the culture you've built, and you don't make sense to me in the most perfect way. I think about your humility, the way that you and Allison have remained grounded, with all the great accomplishment and all the wrestlers you've developed. I think about the way you treat people, the way you handle the little details of life. And it's really inspiring, man. So I always love just learning from you, being around you. Your energy is infectious. I think your humility draws people in. And I know for sure the Panther train is going to keep moving. Go follow Doug Schwab. If you're not following Doug, he definitely does not run his own social media.
No.
He's a great social media follow. The Panther Train on Instagram. I think you've got so much wisdom that you pour out, and you've allowed people to capture some of that wisdom. And I know there's some social media clips of you just sharing leadership lessons with your team, and you're one of my favorite leaders to follow. So, man,
I appreciate that. Well, my wife, she does an incredible job, with our social media and also clipping things and just putting things out there that probably share life. I think we talked a few years ago, like, because there's been some things that she shared that you're like, I don't know, and we kind of went where if it helps one person, then it's worth it. And if,
yes,
if we have to share and be a little bit vulnerable on our end, and I think that's how I think people can relate a little bit more too, because things aren't always perfect. Things aren't always ideal. Again, and we're trying to share all parts of that life, but also trying to live with insight to what we are and who we are as a program. Because again, if you look on the outside and you don't have all this, then the substance, so to speak, is there. And I know our
That's right.
substance is there, and she does an incredible job of showing that and just sharing life.
Well, I think part of that too is you and Allison are people of faith. And, if you're a person of faith, you know that God's power is made perfect in your weakness, not in your strength. So if we're going to point people to him and be a light, it's like, man, we got to share our weakness, and be vulnerable because we're imperfect people in need of grace. So love that about your leadership, man. I just love being your friend. I love learning from you, love being around you. And man, I can't thank you enough for coming on today's show and investing in our podcast community.
No, thanks again. I'm grateful for your encouragement and, the continued encouragement that you give me and I know so many other people too. So hopefully, anyone that watches got something out of it. And, I'm just pretty much taken from everyone else. That's what we do. And just you package it in your own way, but I believe wholeheartedly in what I do and who I get to coach with and who I coach. And I'm just trying to show that to the world. So.
Well, listen, man, you're leading well. You're doing a great job. We're excited for the upcoming season, but more than anything, I'm just excited to watch it impact the world around you, to be your friend. And again, shout out Mark Funk, another elite leader who connected us, allowed us to grow friendship. I know we're going to be friends for a long time to come. So thanks for being here, Doug. God bless you.
Yeah, thank you.
This has been another episode of the Growth Over Goals podcast. I'm your host, Jordan Montgomery, and I want to say thanks again for being with us today. Thanks again to John Choate and his team at Storyline Multimedia for all that they do behind the scenes to make these episodes go. Be well, be great. Have an amazing day.